Good Sunday morning and welcome to Church of the Cross on this Valentine's Day and Transfiguration of the Lord Sunday, our last Sunday in Ordinary Time before we move on to the 40-day season of Lent. This is a wonderful day to worship. We have a lot of great elements to worship today. It's really going to be a meaningful day as we think about love, the costliness of love, the difficulty of love, the troubles, but also the beauty of love. Well, this morning I want to remind you that this Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, and we have two opportunities for you to worship. We have drive-through or drive-up ashes from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and then again from 5 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. You just drive up to the office end of the education building, just give a gentle honk. I'll come out, stay in your car, wear your mask, and I'll have a mask on and a nitrile glove, and we'll have a time for prayer and reflection, and then be happy to put ashes on your forehead. All are welcome to attend that. If you can hear this or see this video, you are certainly welcome to come and receive ashes as we begin the 40 days in Lent. The Wednesday following that, we'll have our Lenten book study as we're looking at forgiveness. And if you're still interested in joining, there's still time. We have books in the office, no cost to you. We'll be doing that via Zoom. But if you can't catch it live via Zoom on Wednesday evenings, we are going to record that, and we can always email it out to you. So however we can help you to have a meaningful and reflective Lenten season, we are more than happy to try to accommodate you and see what we can do to help your spiritual growth during these 40 days. But friends, we're so glad you could join us this morning for worship. As I said before, this is Transfiguration of the Lord Sunday. The word transfiguration refers to the change in form or appearance. On this special day, we will hear from Mark's gospel, and we think that at the transfiguration of the Lord, we celebrate the revelation of the divine glory in the human life of Jesus Christ. And so we think of these three little scripture passages as we begin worship this morning. From Matthew's gospel, on a high mountain, Jesus was transfigured, and God said, "This is my beloved Son." In 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul tells us that as God spoke, calling light out of darkness, well, God's glory shines in the face of Jesus Christ. And then in Psalm 99, we hear that at the mountain of the Lord, bow down, for the Lord our God is holy. My friends, let us pray this morning. Blessed is the Lord our God, who revealed the law to Moses. The Lord our God is holy. Blessed is the Lord our God, who has spoken through the prophets. The Lord our God is holy. Blessed is the Lord our God, who came to us in Jesus Christ. The Lord our God is holy. The one who spoke and called light out of darkness now shines in our hearts. The Lord our God is holy. The one who comes and does not keep silence now speaks in our midst. The Lord our God is holy. Now we have seen the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The Lord our God is holy. Great God of dazzling beauty and overshadowing majesty, in Jesus Christ, your beloved, we glimpse the image of your glory. Teach us to listen to him so that we may hear your voice and follow your holy way. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Our opening psalm this morning is the first 6 verses of Psalm 50. The mighty one, God the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes and does not keep silence. Before him is a devouring fire and a mighty tempest all around him. He calls to the heavens above and to the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me my faithful ones, who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. The heavens declare his righteousness, for God himself is judge. Friends, let's lift up our voices this morning in our opening song, Shine, Jesus, Shine. Friends, as promised last week, we have an opportunity now to hear from Sarah Beam, and she is coming all the way from Delaware. So we invite the children now to come close to the screen, and she's going to share a word on being humble. And that's always a message, even if it was last week's theme. That's always a message we need to hear about humility and humbleness. So, Sarah, she will be taking over for me.
Hello, Church of the Cross family. I am Sarah Beam, coming to you from my home in Milton, Delaware. Today's sermon is entitled Humble Pie. Now, when Drew told me this, I instantly thought of a children's book. It's a occupational hazard. So sorry. But I think you'll like the story that I'm going to share with you is Humble Pie by Jennifer Donnelly and illustrated by Stephen Gamble. I'm not going to read the whole story, but it's about a little boy named Theo who learns a lesson. Once upon a time, and a long time ago it was, there lived a very bad boy named Theo. He thought of nobody besides himself. He never helped his father with the chores, or shared his toys, or gave a penny to a poor beggar. He never gave a bite of sausage to the dog, or a lick of milk to the cat. No one knew why Theo was so awful, but some had theories. His uncle said he ate too much pepper. The village apothecary said he had a small troll living inside him, just below his liver. Only Theo's grandmother knew the truth. The boy was spoiled rotten. His parents made too much of him. His mother wove him tunics of the softest flax, and his father made him a leather pouch for his pennies. He had a plump feather bed and a warm coverlet. He had a crimson cap and a beautiful hobby horse. You would think that Theo might appreciate all that his parents had worked so hard to give him. Not a bit. The more he got, the more he wanted. He became demanding and arrogant, selfish, thoughtless, inconsiderate, grabby, unkind, bumptious, rude and lazy, obnoxious, obstreperous, high-handed, and mouthy. The story goes on to tell of Theo visiting his grandmother and getting put in a pie, and then going on an adventure where he ends his adventure in a village ravaged by famine. They haven't been eaten for a very long time. The villagers are so hungry. Here comes a pie. Fresh, hot, delicious. And they save Theo. You'll have to read the rest of the book to figure out how. Or maybe you can guess. But when Theo returns home, his family observes a major difference in Theo. Let's see. What does being humble mean? Is an adjective, which means it describes something. And it's not proud or arrogant. It's modest. It's being modest. It's having a feeling of insignificance, inferiority, words, subservience. It's being low in rank, low in importance, status, quality. But it's also being courteously respectful. He fed the chickens too, and chopped the wood without being told, she said. What's happened to him? But her husband had no idea. She turned to Theo's grandmother, who was readying herself to leave. Mother, do you know? Looks to me like the boy got his just desserts, Theo's grandmother replied, and then she headed home through the woods, singing as she walked. Flour, butter, salt, I say, Theo's tasted humble pie. Plums and peaches, pears and quince have turned our toad into a prince. Berries ripe and apples tart have opened wide his selfish heart. Once stubborn, now he's sweet and willing. There's magic in a good pie filling. What lesson do you think Theo learned? Did he learn some humility? That he had it pretty good? You have to read the book to find out. And in a not so humble plug, you can do so by visiting the Rehoboth Beach Public Library YouTube page, where I read this story last summer for our summer reading challenge. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you all very soon, and I hope you keep safe.
We're certainly grateful to Sarah for sharing that important lesson on being humble. I was actually a little afraid that Theo was going to get baked into the pie, and that would have turned out really ugly. But that's a really great lesson to learn and to remember that we may have some really nice things, but if we don't share them, if we're not a servant to others, and that's what God's love teaches us. That's what we're thinking about this morning is thinking about God's love. It's Valentine's Day. This only happens once every 7 years. And so we're thinking this morning about what God's love looks like, or what our love for other people looks like. So our first scripture lesson this morning comes to us from 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up, and struck the water. The water was parted to one side and to the other, until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted to you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. Our second scripture lesson comes from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 9, verses 2 through 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Friends, would you pray with me for just one moment? Lord, speak to these people whom you love through your most imperfect vessel. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Some of you may be aware of how the process to being ordained as a minister of the Word and Sacrament works in the Presbyterian Church. Some of you may not. So here's just a quick little lesson. It's a multi-year process. It begins in the phase called Inquirer for Ministry. And after about a year, at least a year, you may be moved on if you have met certain benchmarks and standards. You may be moved on to the candidate for ministry phase. And then again, after about a year, no less than a year, you can be moved on to a candidate for ministry ready to receive a call. So this is a multi-year process, and it actually begins not at the presbytery level, but it begins at the congregation level. Usually the inquirer and their pastor and their session are all in a discernment process together. They're all praying and wondering if this person, this woman or man, has the gifts good and sufficient for ordained ministry as a minister of the Word and Sacrament. And once they've all prayed together and they've talked together, they've discerned together, then they make a decision on whether or not they feel this person is fit and right and ready to enter the inquiry phase, an even further discernment phase. And they meet with that person, and they being the session, they meet with that person, they discuss things with them, they learn about their sense of call, and if they feel it is right, they will endorse a form and send it off to the Presbytery's Committee on the Preparation for Ministry, and then they will help to take over care. But all along the way, the session and the congregation that person is coming from, they continue to have primary responsibility for the spiritual life and nurture and discernment of that inquirer for ministry. When I was in college, I began that process. I started a little bit earlier than most people do because I wanted plenty of time to inquire, to discern, to think, to pray. And it's a very interesting process that I've only in the last few years really started to think about from the perspective of my congregation that I grew up in. This was the place where I was born and where I was baptized, where they took care of me in the nursery, where they taught me in Sunday school, where they were there for me in vacation Bible school, where they were always there to walk alongside me in every different age and stage and part of my spiritual journey, even when I ran away from that fellowship. They were still there to love on me. And so when I was in college and I approached the session, it had to be a very interesting time. Because they knew and they understood this process, they knew that they were celebrating such a wonderful milestone in a person's life, that they were discerning a call to ministry, and yet they were beginning the process of saying goodbye. And that has to be a very odd position to find yourself in. You celebrate wholeheartedly with this person who has been called to ministry, to move on from your ranks. You've done a job good and sufficient to raise them up and to teach them so that they could go through this process of discernment and learning and going into this journey. But as you are celebrating with them, you are also beginning to say goodbye. You're starting to push them away from you in a very loving way. You're not pushing them away because you don't like them. You're pushing them away because you love them so much that you want what God wants for them. And that's to move on to this, in this process of being ordained. And so each time I would come home from college or even from seminary after I became a candidate for ministry, they would celebrate and they wanted to hear all about the classes and the grades that I received. They always wanted to celebrate in these accomplishments and what I had learned and my field education and where I had been and all the various and different things that I had done. But again, all along the way, as they were celebrating in this movement, this journey in the Spirit, they were still saying goodbye. And so when the day finally came and I was certified, ready to receive a call, I was in that stage, and then a call came and it was verified by my presbytery and by the presbytery of call. And we went through that whole process. The congregation that I was raised in, the place where people had bounced me on their knee and taught me in the very beginning of my life about Jesus, they were celebrating. They rejoiced. It was a moment, my parents tell me, it was a moment for rejoicing during Sunday worship that a call had come, that I was going to be ordained. There was much rejoicing and clapping, and prayers to God of thanksgiving were given. But they also were saying their final goodbye. After I was ordained, after I received that call, my congregation wanted to hold a special luncheon and celebratory affair. It's a good Presbyterian thing. We can't do anything without food and a cake, right? And so we had that in my home church. And it was one of the last times I've ever been there. Not because I hate them or I don't want to be there, but I'm usually a little bit busy on Sunday mornings. And they were also happy, but they were saying goodbye. All of that love that they had poured into my life had come to fruition. It had come to a point. But that point was now over. Love, this is the day of love. This is the day when there will be more viewers of the Hallmark Channel than any other day of the year. But that's not the real kind of love. I'm not saying that romantic love isn't real. Of course it is. But the type of love that I'm talking about, that we heard about in Scripture today, is a costly love. It is a painful love. It requires a lot of us. We heard in that 2 Kings passage about Elijah and Elisha. Elisha was the student of Elijah. And it was very common for a prophetic student to call their mentor, their teacher, father. They weren't related. It's just a very common epithet. But they grew together. They had love for each other. I know what that feels like. To lose your mentor. All the love that they have poured into you and all the love you've poured into them and the wisdom you've sought from them, and all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, they're taken from you. And then you're left standing there on your own 2 feet and you're trying to figure out, what does it all mean? Elisha, if anything is true, Elisha has absolutely no confidence in himself. He still wants Elijah around. He still needs that person to be able to call with his questions. He still has a lot of things he's got to figure out. He's trying to discern his own sense of call. He's trying to figure out where he fits in the world, because up until that point, Elijah was the chief prophet, and Elisha just kind of tagged along behind. Wherever Elijah went, there he went. But now it's going to be up to Elisha. He is going to have to be the chief voice of God for this people. This people who are described commonly as, those who wrestle with God and stiff-necked. Not an easy group to be the preacher for. And he's gone in the blink of an eye. All throughout this passage, we hear about the pain of Elisha's love for Elijah. He knows that this is going to have to happen. He knows that it is God's will for Elijah to be taken away, but that doesn't change the fact that this love is going to hurt. Each time they go to a different city, Elijah's trying to make it a little bit easier for him and saying, why don't you just stay here? Just make it easier on yourself. You don't want to go through this. And Elisha says, no, I've got to be near you until the very end. And so they go from Bethel to Jericho, from Jericho to the Jordan, and then Elijah is taken by God. And each time they go, members of the company of prophets, the other more minor prophets, are saying, hey, Elisha, you do know that your mentor is about to go away, don't you? And we hear Elisha's painful response. Yes, I know. Shut up. Don't remind me. This already hurts. I've already thought about that. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I don't know what the world is going to look like without my mentor, without my teacher, the one who has led me all along the way. And each time they ask, and each time they ask, and each time they ask, and it cuts into Elisha each time, because Elijah has put so much love and effort into forming Elisha up. And Elisha has given that love back in trying to learn and trying to find his place as a prophet in the world. And so when he knows that his teacher is about to leave him, it cuts at him. And then we hear at the end of that passage that when he can see Elijah no more, he tears his clothes in two. That is a biblical symbol of deep grief and mourning. He doesn't know what to do. He is stuck in that moment. I know that feeling. I know what that's like to have your mentor taken away from you in the blink of an eye. When I was 14 in my home church, the pastor that we had at the time, Reverend Paul, and I've talked about him before, he told me that I was going to be a pastor. I laughed at him and told him, no, I'm going to be a lawyer. Ha, Paul won. Paul was my first mentor. He was my first friend. Not my first friend, but my first friend and colleague in ministry. He helped me to wrestle with my questions. He gave me the space to be angry and to try to figure things out. He was always there, full of grace and full of love, to try to walk alongside me in this journey as I was trying to discern what it meant for God to have a call on my life. When I was home for Thanksgiving break from college, we were getting ready to go to church that morning. Sitting on the couch and drinking coffee and just chatting, reading the paper, and the phone rang. And it was our clerk of session, Dave, at the time, and he called and told my dad something, and I didn't hear he was in the other room, but Dad came in and he said that Reverend Paul had died. That morning, that Sunday morning, he had died. I was completely lost. Nobody saw this coming. He hadn't been sick for a long time. This was all of a sudden this happened. Dave called back about 10 minutes later. He said, I've just spoken to all the members of the session, and they would like me, to preach this morning. I've just lost my mentor, my friend, my colleague, the one who was helping me to form and discern my sense of call. And now you want me to get up in his pulpit, where he was just there last Sunday. You want me to get up and fill his shoes. I did not rip my clothes in two, but spiritually I was. I didn't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I was lost. I was scared. That love that Paul had poured into me and the love I had poured back into him was gone just like that. I wasn't prepared for that moment. But I had to accept that that was what God had willed in that moment. That's what God wanted to do. I didn't have to like it. I didn't really even have to make sense out of it. I just had to know that Paul was being called to something else. And this was time for me to get kicked in the seat of my pants and to force me forward in that call, to be ready to have a baptism of fire in a sense, to lead this people of God on the Sunday when their pastor had died suddenly. I had no idea what to do. I was a college student. I had no training in ministry. I didn't really know how to preach. I'd only preached a couple of times, and the first sermon that I ever preached was called God and Taco Bell. That thing was like complete junk. I don't know how I did it. That love that I had and the love I had given, the love I had received was costly love. There was a transformation that was going on right in my own life, right in front of this full view of people, this congregation of people who had loved me, who had helped me, were still helping me and praying and discerning with me on where to go. But I had to try to make sense out of all of it in 45 minutes. That's all the time I had to get ready for worship that morning. To this day, I don't even know what scripture I read or what I said or what I did. I was pretty much on autopilot. So then I had to spend time after that trying to figure out, well, if Paul's not here, where am I going to go? I was very angry at God because I hadn't finished my process yet. I wasn't completely to that point. I hadn't even become a candidate for ministry yet. I wasn't in seminary yet. I didn't know. I had a ton of questions. I didn't know what to do or where to go from there. And so I was very, very angry. I didn't know what to make of anything. I spent a lot of time just kind of wandering through life, trying to figure things out. I asked professors who were ordained and other people that I knew for help and for guidance, and it just wasn't there. Till one afternoon, I was home visiting, and I went out for a walk around my hometown. And I ended up finding myself on the front steps of the rectory at the Catholic Church. I'd known Father Frank for years. He was a good friend of the family. I'd known him for years. And I just found myself ringing the doorbell and going to his office and sitting there, and in a short back and forth, he finally said, "Look, I know you are angry at God for taking Paul from you. But why don't you and I work together? Why don't I see if I can help you?" And so then for the next couple of years, a Catholic priest became my mentor. He kept trying to get me to become a Catholic priest. It was kind of an interesting sales pitch, but it didn't work. But he became my mentor. He helped me to work through these things. See, our love that we have with each other, it comes to an end eventually. People go away. People move. People die. Relationships break up and they end. But the love that God has for us, it doesn't end. It continues. But it may transform. It might look a little bit different. See, God had expressed God's love for me in this relationship that I'd had with Paul for several years. For quite a few years, actually. And that love that God showed me in that place and in that relationship, it didn't end when Paul ended. It just transformed. It moved. It was time for the next step in that journey. And if Paul hadn't have moved, I couldn't have learned the things that I learned from Frank. I couldn't have had that relationship that I had with him, that he was able to help me with things. See, God's love was the constant in all of it. Our relationships will end. But God's love with us doesn't. Transformation can be hard because there's love and there's assumptions in relationships. There's difficulties that happen. We hear this in the Mark passage. Whatever the disciples knew or believed about Jesus, in this one moment for Peter, James, and John on the mountain, whatever they believed got wiped out. Because right in front of their eyes, Christ was transfigured. He was transformed. Sure, they had seen him heal people before and probably had some questions about how he did that. They'd heard him teach, of course, and they'd go, "Wow, he's such a great teacher. How is he doing this?" But then in that one moment in time, see, none of them had been there when he was baptized. But in that one moment in time, they see Jesus being transfigured, becoming divine right in front of their eyes. And then they hear this voice from heaven. This is my beloved Son. Listen to his words. So whatever they thought and whatever they believed in their relationship with Jesus before this got completely changed before their eyes. Their relationship after this moment in time would have been wholly different. They would have looked at him quite differently. They would have seen other things about him. The love that they had received from him, the love they had given to him, their questions, their puzzling, maybe some of it came to completion. They got it all figured. That's how he was healing people. Aha! Or maybe they were even more stunned and confused than before. But in any case, the relationship that they had with Christ after this moment would change. After this transforming, transfiguring moment. A lot of us have that kind of an experience in our lives. I've seen this happen when I used to work in addiction counseling. I saw this happen all the time. I would have my clients, they would ask me these questions. They would say, look, I've been sober for 6 months or 8 months or a year or whatever, and people treat me different. My family, they trust me. The friends I used to have won't speak to me anymore. Yeah, because you have been transfigured. You've been transformed by the power of God in this journey that you're on. They don't know how to look at you anymore because the old definitions have fallen away. And there's new definitions being created every single day. Think about people in your own life. Think about your own life. Do people that you knew 20, 30, 40 years ago, do they still look at you the same way? Has something changed in your life? Has something changed in theirs? Do you look at them differently? The love that you once had in that relationship that was shared, is it still there? Or does it all look different? Was there a transforming moment? Was there a transfiguring moment? When I was ordained, my home church, they look at me differently now. In some ways, they still see the kid who would run around in the social hall after church, or sat on their knee in the nursery, or whatever. But in other ways, they see something different. That relationship has changed. Love is a beautiful thing, but sometimes it's really complicated. It's costly, it's prickly, it's weird. It's hard to get hold of and make sense out of. We still love the person, but we're not sure how to embrace them. The role in the relationship has changed. How did James and Peter and John, how did they approach Jesus after this time? What did they think about him? What did they think about their relationship to him? Right in the middle of that story, they hear about the costliness of the love. Right at the end of that passage we heard this morning, it said that they weren't to tell anybody what they saw or what they experienced on the mountain until Jesus had died. They're watching this grand glorification moment when their Messiah, their Lord, their teacher is being transfigured before their eyes, and there's Elijah and there's Moses, and it's just complete holiness. And then all of a sudden they get a kick to the gut that says, don't tell anybody until he dies. What does that do to their definitions of their relationship with him or his power, his glory? What are they going to do with that? Because they see something really holy and then they're being told he's going to die. It makes that relationship harder. They're hearing about the costliness of God's love. What God is willing to spend, God's own self, to love us. How deep that love is. How costly it is. It makes our relationship to God change. When we realize the depth, the cost of God's love, our relationship to God changes. Before that time, before we have that deep inner spiritual understanding, we may think God is big, God is creative, God is powerful, God is even forgiving. But when we finally come to terms with the fact that God was willing to spend so much to love us, to save us, to restore us, to redeem us, it changes our relationship with God in a good way. We realize the depth, the cost, the pain, and the suffering that God was willing to endure for us on our behalf. That changes things. When you see a person in your own life who's willing to give up so much for other people, how does your relationship change to them? How do you perceive them differently? That's what happens in our relationship with God. We realize the depth and the cost. And so it humbles us. It hopefully transforms us and makes us realize about what our own loving relationships should be and must be to reflect this love that God has for us. Are they willing? Are you willing? Are our relationships willing to be based in an economy of spending? Spending what we have, giving it, not expecting anything in return. Are we willing to share costly love? Are we willing to give that love up to help other people, to love them, to save them, to redeem them? Because that's what God was willing to do for us. And it forever transformed the relationship that God has with us. All of our human relationships, all the forms of love that we express, whether it's romantic love or family love or love amongst friends, all of that love for those who are followers of the Christ, all of that love is supposed to be steeped in this notion of costliness, sacrifice. It's supposed to reflect what we are willing to give up in order to demonstrate that love. We pass on the love that we receive. And the love that we receive is costly love. It's the willingness of God to come as one of us, to die as one of us, to die for us. That's the love we're asked to demonstrate. So when we think about Valentine's Day, sure, it's great with chocolates and flowers and cards and other expressions of love, but I want you to think more deeply. I want you to think about how deep God's love is for us, how costly it is for us. And then ask yourself if you're willing to share that, to let your relationships be transformed, just as God's relationship was transformed with you. Are you willing to do that for other people? Are you willing to sacrifice and to suffer? Are you willing to see that God's love is constant and our love ends? Are you willing to spend what's necessary to love other people? And friends, this morning, our choir has put together a fantastic rendition of how deep the Father's love for us is. I want you to think and listen as you hear them singing. I want you to think prayerfully, thoughtfully, provokingly, that they are helping to raise this question and help us to reflect on what we've heard this morning. It is a powerful, powerful rendition of that song. And I hope you find it to be prayerful and meaningful to you. So with that, here is our choir. A tremendous, tremendous thank you to all those who were involved in the production of that, especially to Yeshua, our sound engineer, who put in a lot of hours getting everything edited together, for Sarah for the brainchild behind the idea and getting the choir to sing that, and to Mariana, who played the cello. Mariana's a student down at Mercyhurst, and so we're grateful for her to share that gift with us this morning. Friends, that is a powerful word in that song. How deep the Father's love is for us. What God was willing to spend and to give for our benefit, expecting nothing in return. Friends, that's a love that we give. We're expected to give. Is to give that love and expect nothing back. But to give God's love revealed to us in Jesus Christ. And to only accept that we have received that love and give it to all. Friends, I hope to see you this Wednesday at 7 o'clock or during the day to receive ashes. 7 o'clock we have worship for Ash Wednesdays. We begin our 40-day journey to Lent. Friends, as we leave worship this morning, you're going to hear one more piece of special music. This one comes from our own Yeshua. Comes off of his new album. I'm going to give him the shameless plug because I know he won't do it himself. But it comes off of one of his newest albums. This song is called Love Is. And it is a beautiful and interesting reinterpretation of 1 Corinthians 13. It has a wonderful feeling of being kind of churchy, has almost an organ sound to it. And then it also gets into the lyrics, and it's this thought about what is love. So as we leave worship this morning, friends, I hope you'll listen closely to Yeshua's words as he shares them with us this morning.